advanced engineering in the temples of the pharaohs. You are listening to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, nestled amongst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed high atop the Edwards Plateau. And winter is here.
Coming. It is here.
It has arrived. Outside, it is a blowing maelstrom of very cold air coming from a collapsed polar vortex or something.
That's right, and it's going to be below freezing.
That's right.
In the wee hours of the morning.
That's right.
Which means we have to go back to work after this podcast.
Yeah, so after this podcast, we will be venturing out to our place of employment to protect a bunch of young trees from dying in the freezing.
Drink wine.
Possibly drink some wine.
Yeah, we gotta it's blowing pretty hard, and we have to pull out this 26 by 100 foot tarp thing.
Yeah,
poly thing in the wind,
long
and
plastic roll. Yeah,
throw it over a 100 foot long, what looks like a hangar for a very small aircraft.
Yeah, maybe for a rocket or a missile.
Yeah. Same shape, but it's only 26 feet from the bottom of one side to the wall on the other side.
Right. So it's 26 feet across, but how tall is it at the apex? Maybe 15.
Yeah, 16 feet.
16 feet.
15
Yeah.
feet.
So it's like a long hallway with a barreled ceiling, basically.
Yeah. One side is a solid wall, and the rest of it's just open framing.
Open framing
for the trees in the nursery to get sunlight and everything during the
warm.
What earlier this afternoon was fall.
That's right.
And now it's going to be winter in the morning. And we didn't see the forecast. Actually, I didn't see it until I was on my way home. And I was like, oh my God. We have to go back.
700 young trees in there that could die if we don't try to cover this up overnight and protect them from the cold and the wind and the rain. So, looking forward to
Farming
that.
is hard.
That's right. So after, it's, what is it, 8 o'clock? Yeah, 8:30 here. So after we're done podcasting and we finish editing it, and which is not much, and then we get it uploaded and posted, which will probably be around 11 o'clock. We're driving for an hour to get to the orchard, and then we're going to be spending most of the night trying to get a giant piece of plastic
in a blizzard, in a giant storm.
Yeah, in a winter storm, strapped down to this.
Not a blizzard. It's strong winds.
If we were a little farther north, it would be a blizzard.
Yeah.
It probably is a blizzard farther north.
Fun.
Well, finally, after, 3 episodes, we do have our good friend and longhead, Mr. Brett England, the Watcher, joining us from deep beneath his secret space station in secret outer space. Buddy, what are you doing?
He's back.
He's back. In a world.
So I have 2 thoughts. Thought the first, I really think that it's terrible that you guys are interfering with nature and doing all these things with the trees, because nature is beautiful and you should leave it alone. Second,
You're right. Nature it's beautiful.
That's right.
second, so they will be exhausted. I am exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
This should be a great show.
Yeah.
By midnight tonight, I will have worked 48 out of the last 96 hours. So I'm excited to see where this goes.
Yeah. So he's
The Watcher is back in a world where the Watcher returns.
Those buttons are too close together.
In a world where podcasts have watchers.
That was good. Very well done. Very well done. All right. Since we've given you the ground weather, let's go to space weather news. from spaceweather.com. No CME, no problem. A slow-moving CME that was expected to hit Earth's magnetic field on October 29th has either missed, been delayed, or its impact was too feeble to notice. No CME, no problem. Arctic skywatchers may still see auroras tonight and tomorrow as Earth enters a stream of solar wind flowing from a southern hole in the sun's atmosphere. Also, Space Pumpkin sets high altitude record. Every year around Halloween, something spooky happens to the spaceweather.com Earth-to-Sky Calculus Cosmic Ray Ballooning Program. It turns into a pumpkin. Launched by students on October 18th, this year's jack-o'-lantern soared 109,908 feet above Earth, breaking the previous high-altitude mark for space pumpkins, set by us in 2017 by more than 2,600 feet. We do this every October. Why? Because we gotta. No, that's not what he says. Because it stretches our skills as balloonists, using a giant orange squash as payload instead of our usual insulated capsule, challenges us to invent ways to keep electronics warm, to mount the cosmic ray sensors, to GPS track the flight, and it's fun. We have been launching cosmic ray balloons from the Sierra Nevada mountains of California almost once a week since 2015, gathering a unique record of radiation in Earth's atmosphere. Since the launches began, atmospheric radiation has increased almost 20%, a counterintuitive side effect of solar minimum. Stay tuned for radiation data collected during this flight with an edited video and soundtrack. Also, Venus-Moon conjunction. Yesterday at sunset, the whisper-thin crescent moon passed by Venus in the western sky. Mohammed Al-Asfour photographed the conjunction from Bahrain. That's beautiful there. Beautiful picture. Yeah. Observers around the world from China to Arizona and beyond saw the conjunction. Did you miss it? An even better display is coming next month on November 28th when Venus and the moon meet again, with Jupiter joining the conjunction as well. Mark your calendar and enjoy the show.
There's also something... wait, maybe I wasn't listening when you were saying this, but... there's something I put in my calendar a while back, like I guess it was Venus or something was going to transverse the sun.
Yeah, Venus or Mars or
it's in November,
Mercury
right?
transit.
Yeah,
something like that.
I have to look at my calendar.
Yeah. So current conditions: solar wind speed 397.2 kilometers per second, density 18.0 protons per cubic centimeter.
Yep. It's got cold.
Did you find it?
Yeah, on November 11th, Mercury crosses the sun.
Okay. So this one is November 28th. Venus and Moon meet again with Jupiter joining the conjunction. So
that's Thanksgiving Day.
Oh, cool.
November 28th.
Nice.
All right. So what do I put in here? Venus,
Jupiter. Venus, Jupiter, lunar conjunction.
Lunar conjunction.
Cool.
No, not Von Junction.
Von Junction.
Yeah, all right. Saved.
Okay. It's in the calendar.
Yeah.
All right. I have
totally forgot.
I have lots of listener communications because we didn't do any last week. So I have quite a bit.
Go.
Okay. Let's see. Sebastian, this is from Sab. Hey guys, I received my snakeskin shirt today and I am highly impressed with the quality.
All right.
So I guess these skirptards will have to go get their own.
Sweet. Serves him right.
Yeah. He also has a bunch of comments here that are aimed towards Cosmographia, which we have been doing with Randall Carlson. By the way, if anybody doesn't know, we are doing a podcast with Randall Carlson called Cosmographia, spelled with a K. So I will save those comments for that podcast. But that first part was for us. Let's see. I haven't really read this one, but it's from Roddy. He says, Dear Ophidian siblings, Was listening to a few early episodes on Enoch, and your comments as to why the angels would choose someone who couldn't read or write to be their scribe had me wondering. What if the language they taught him wasn't Hebrew? What if the language was mathematics, or a special language the angels use for science? Both types of languages would use special words, terms, and symbols unknown to a primitive, uneducated shepherd/farmer. Just a thought wandering the gray maze of my mind. Thank you in advance, Roddy Frey, Mammal.
I like the way you think.
I guess he's not a snake yet. He's still a mammal.
You can still join the snake force as a mammal.
That's right. The special division. This is from the Grand Watcher about bloodless cows. He says, Linda Moulton Howe is the authority on this subject. Having followed it since 1979, she produced a television special called Strange Harvest, which is how she rose to prominence in ufology. She has hundreds of pages of research at her website. So this email confused me for a while because I thought we said some of this in the last show, but what I realized is I think that he wants everyone listening to know this. So yes, the Grand Watcher is correct. Linda Moulton Howe made a great documentary about cattle mutilations called Strange Harvest. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It is sort of dated. It's, made in the early 80s. But it's good and very interesting. And then she has a website which has tons of research on this topic. So check it out.
Yeah. Watcher posted some pictures of...
Oh, yes. The second image is the flag of Tunisia.
Yeah, it has a star transversing the moon.
Yeah.
But it's in front of it.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been very close. Let's see, from David.
Man, that'd be crazy to see like a comet go by.
Oh, yeah, in front of the moon.
Yeah.
From David, the guy, this is David, friend of the show, who has sent us much tobacco and pipe technologies. And
a good friend.
Yes, good friend of the show. Our good Betty David. Hello, Snake Brothers. Amazing episode as per usual with your view on lost technologies of ancient Egypt. Regarding these high-speed drill cores in Egypt, there is an extremely plausible way this could have been done. As soon as I have a spare afternoon or so and access to drill bits, string, scrap wood, a bar of soap, and bacon fat, I am going to build out my proof of concept spindle drop drill. For extra credit, I could make the thing multi-stage with self-pulling pins, but I should really start with the simple part. I have tomorrow off. I think I'll start making it then. It will work much better with the added technical talents and workshop of my colleague Brian, but I will let you know when I arrive at my primitive modern example of ancient advanced technology.
Amidst copious amounts of fine tobacco
products.
smoke.
That's right. More soon, probably, David.
Awesome.
Haven't heard from him since.
Still drilling. By the way, I went to the website where you sent us the tobacco from. You ordered the tobacco from,
yeah,
David.
He's talking to David, yeah.
And I got that same kind, and I was very impressed with the extremely low prices.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Way cheaper than you can get it anywhere around here. So, fantastic. Thank you very much. And
he ordered like 5 ounces.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's going to arrive in the mail now at a humidor.
Yeah.
So anybody want to send me a 1-up box with
humidor in it?
With a humidor in it.
Here's another one from the Grand Watcher. This is a technical support question. I found you on Player, but you're still not on YouTube. End of email. No punctuation. Do not know what Player means. I'm not sure if he meant to send that or not. Anyway, we are on YouTube. Just look us up in the YouTube search, Brothers of the Serpent. And Player is probably Player FM, and we are on there as well. Let's see, from Dean. From Dean, Pyramids, Snakeology, and Butt Flap Logic. Serpentine greetings, brothers. Loving the work you young adders have been doing for the last couple of years, especially more recently the Cosmographia mini epic. It is not mini. I mean, it is mini right now, but there is no plans to stop it. So, having been a prehistoriolic For the last 20 years or so, being the wrinkly old skin-shedding Yorkshire grass snake that I am, it is a breath of fresh air to have two young Texas rattlesnakes finally get their fangs into this intriguing subject, injecting fresh venom and views along with the humor and mirth that you present weekly. Okay, butt flap kissing session over. Keep up the great work, and if you're ever short of new guests and or material, I can highly recommend that you check out Matt at the Ancient Architects channel and Chuck at CF Apps 7865. Both seem to have undrainable wells of knowledge, and both are well grounded in their analytical deducting. They do think outside the box regularly, like yourselves, but there's no woo-woo theories. Anywho, must be slithering along. Got an egg to steal. I'm starting to resemble a worm. Have fun with the pipe smoking and giving the quackologist / snakeologist hell. As we all know, they've got prehistory so wrong. It would be funny if it wasn't so sad. Best wishes for your future research, Dean. Snake Force, Yorkshire Branch.
Yes.
P.S. Next time you speak to Randall, ask him about bananas and their origins in relation to the Atlantis topic. That's a great idea. I love these emails.
The snaky emails.
From Sean, titled, Fuck Yes. Finally found a new podcast, heard you on Conspiranormal this morning, and you guys are right up my alley of interest. Just subscribed to you on YouTube, iTunes, and I am listening until I'm caught up. Had never heard of you guys. If you aren't on the Paranormal app, I suggest trying to get on there. Also, tune in. I'll use both of those. Don't think you are on there. Great topics, great conversation. Good luck with everything, Sean. So I think we are on Tuned In. I looked up the Paranormal app, and no, we're not on that. It's a app. So I'm not sure how to go about doing that. I think that's one of the... I'll have to do more research, but it looked to me like that's one of those deals where you have to be part of a big podcasting service, which we're not. We do everything in-house. So we own our own server and all that stuff. We're not like on Libsyn or Blueberry, one of those big podcasting hosting services, which is how people get on Spotify and other stuff like that. So we're not on that. We use our own server. It's basically the server for the band. It has unlimited storage and bandwidth. So that's where we host everything. So we don't pay for a hosting service.
Yeah.
So, but I'll keep checking. I'm not sure how we can get on that app though, but that would be cool. I was able to get...
Self-publishing is hard.
Yeah, that's right. More complicated.
But you've done a good job. So,
thank you.
yeah.
Alex. Oh, this is from Alex Coppersmith. Hell yes. Hey bros, just wanted to share a revelation I had recently that I am a moron.
I hate those. But they're also great.
Yeah. I realized this while listening to Cosmographia when Randall did the, quote, show me the potsherds impersonation. It was then that I learned potsherd is a word. I've heard you guys say it a bunch of times now, and I just thought you had a weird way of pronouncing shard over there on the plateau. The first
we do. We pronounce it shards.
Yeah. I lost my spot. Let's see. Where was I?
Bunch of shards of glass
The
over
first
there.
time I heard you say, show me the potsherds, it was to make a joke, and I had no clue about its origins. I actually thought you were saying pot shirts. And boy, was I confused. And that's why I'm a moron. But I choose to see the silver lining in my sad and weak vocabulary, because you know what we say around here. Quote, when life hands you cobras, you make snake oil. Unquote. So here's my multi-dollar idea. Print, quote, show me the potsherds, unquote, on shirts made from hemp, and voila, you have potsherd pot shirts.
Pot shirts. Genius.
Later, bros, keep on tipping over the skirptards derp carts.
Cobras! I'm really bad with this keyboard right now.
Well, that key is pretty far away from you.
Yeah, but
That was specifically put there for me to use.
I didn't. That's right. I didn't label those.
Yeah, those two aren't labeled.
Almost had a Storm Area 51 update.
Yeah, we can get rid of that. I mean, that's over.
Yeah, that's over. No one did it.
Actually, 3,000 people showed up to a 3,000 people showed up to a conference style thing. Jeremy Corbett was there. The guy who did the what's his name? What's the guy that did the Area 51 testimony on Joe Rogan?
Bob Lazar.
Jeremy Corbett, the guy who did the documentary about Bob Lazar's stuff, was there, and a bunch of other people, and they did presentations and stuff. So it was cool.
Was there Naruto running involved?
I don't know. They didn't storm the base. They just were, nearby, and a bunch of people showed up, and they did a conference, and it was cool. So at least that's what I heard from Jeremy on the next really good Joe Rogan that had
the Air Force guy?
The Air Force guy on there, yeah. Or the Navy guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Navy pilot. So that was a fantastic. Okay, so there's one other person in the emails here that I want to address. And I think this person's name is Lewis. So here's my problem. Lewis or L Swell or my problem is I don't know who you are. Every email I've gotten from you seems to have a different name attached to it. But I think they're all from the same email address. So that confused me initially. I think you're now saying your name is now Lou. Anyway, you have some great information in your emails, but they're, number one, extremely long. And number two, I don't really understand some of what you're talking about. And I think it's because you're using local jargon or something. I'm not sure. I think you may be from Ireland. I'm not sure. Anyway, you have interesting information, but I can't read your emails on the show because I don't know what you're talking about. So,
thanks, buddy.
Yeah,
keep them coming.
But you had so you did send us one that told Kyle that the Daily Star.
Oh yeah,
is a rag, right? So
yeah. So I've been like, one of my news feeds often puts these articles in from the Daily Star, and Lou let us know that it's basically a hardcore tabloid in the UK, I guess.
Yeah.
So they have a bunch of fake news, which most of my news stories are fake news. Yeah, there's actually quite a bit that I see from that website that I don't read on the show because, like, I'll look into them and I'll be like, this is totally dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of them was a massive serpent seen in some lock somewhere, and there's photos of it and everything. And then they go through all this stuff about it, about how this is this massive creature. And then they put this one guy's theory in there that it was the raft ring, like this big rubber ring that goes around a raft. That was dislodged from the raft and was just floating in the water. And then at the very end of the article, they had a picture of the guys in a boat pulling this raft ring into the boat that was the quote unquote serpent that was seen in the water.
Definitely a rubber ring.
Why would you even write this story? So yeah, they have some pretty ridiculous stuff, a lot of ridiculous alien stories and stuff that I do not report, but occasionally. Like the one that I reported last time was basically quoting the guy that was on Joe Rogan and the stories that he was telling.
That's right.
The Navy officer on Joe Rogan. So,
and I went and listened to that since then. I've listened to it multiple times, and it is a fantastic episode. So I recommend everyone check that one out. It's like 1360 something. So
yeah, but thanks for the heads up because it is a tabloid. So I will be more watchful.
Yeah. So he sent us some cool pictures of giant cranes that he says he saw in Korea.
And that was the Daily Star, by the way.
Okay,
was the name of the website, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So he sent us some pictures of giant cranes. He was talking about the episode where the pyramids were hard episode with the snake stash. Yeah, we're looking at the chat window, Watcher. Don't don't act like we're not.
Commander David Fravor. Okay, sorry. Wasn't registering. Yes, thank you, Watcher.
Yeah,
he was the guy on Joe Rogan.
That's right, Commander David Fravor. Yeah, and
we're so used to not having you here that I'm just looking at your information that you're posting, and it's just not even ready.
It's episode 1361 with Commander David Fravor and Jeremy Corbett.
And he also points out that in the Men in Black movie, they use tabloids for
to actually get real news about aliens.
real news about alien investigations. So, you know, come on, Lou.
Yeah. So, anyway, Lou, I wanted to let you know that I have been getting your emails and I have been reading them. And I also see you have been posting some stuff on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So, yes, thank you for all the communications. Just in the future, try to make more sense so that I can understand what you're talking about. I'm not making fun of you, man. I'm serious. You seem to have great stuff in here, but I don't understand some of your jargon. Your
colloquialisms.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry about that. I'm an idiot sometimes when it comes to this stuff.
I probably need to read it.
Yeah. I'll send them to Kyle. All right. So that's it for the emails.
All right. I got a story here. Haven't really vetted it.
Well, I have a couple of just two very short reviews.
Oh, and also emails. There was somebody who sent that they wanted a really long @SnakeBro email.
Yeah, it was Robert.
Yeah, he's a contributor to the Pyramid Scheme, but I didn't get a return email from you because I think that came from Patreon.
Yeah, so
you should send us an email to our email address from you what you want, and it could be anything. It doesn't have to be really long and complicated because we have the domain. There's not very many emails on there, so it can be simple. But yeah, send us an email.
Yeah, so anyone who is on Patreon or who has
donated to
the Pyramid Scheme through PayPal or anything, send us an email with the title in there, like email request, so that I can see it and I'll know that it's email request, and then I can forward it to Kyle, and just make sure that you include what email you want it to be sending to and what you want the email to be, the forward address to be.
We have snakebro.com and scriptard.com.
That's right.
But they're forwarding email addresses again, so you won't be able to send emails from this email address, but you can give it out.
Yeah, it's like a mask.
Yeah. And when people send emails to that snakebro.com email, it will come to your actual email address.
Yeah, the one that you tell us to have it be sent to. Yes.
So it's just a little perk that we can give you guys for supporting the show. So
yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, one of the perks. We're coming up with other ones. Okay, so two very, very short reviews here. This one's called Snake Bros, and it says, like Coast to Coast for adults. Snacks!
Coast to Coast for adults.
The watcher wants facepalm at scriptard.com. Yes, you can have that one.
You can have that.
And the other review I was going to read is called Great Review. Great review, 5 stars. Snake Bros. That's from Windac in Canada. Thanks, buddy. We very much appreciate the reviews. So
That was a great review. Thank you.
All right. What do you got?
I have one news story.
Good.
I've been really
Busy.
not enjoying my news feed lately, and I need to go find better sources.
Yeah.
But so I have one.
More tabloids.
That's right. I need more tabloids. This is from thesun.co.uk. Hopefully not a tabloid. Lost empire that ruled Mesopotamia for 200 years wiped out by apocalyptic dust storm, experts claim.
Wow.
An advanced civilization that ruled large swaths of the Middle East 4,000 years ago may have been wiped out by a spot of bad weather. The Akkadian Empire flourished during the Bronze Age, and new evidence suggests their sudden demise was brought about by a catastrophic dust storm, or dust storms. These storms made it near impossible to grow crops, triggering widespread famine, according to a group of researchers in Japan. The Akkadian Empire ruled parts of ancient Mesopotamia in what is now Iraq and Syria from the 24th to the 22nd century BC. Based on the ancient city of Akkad, the group rose to prominence through innovations in farming and irrigation. However, they mysteriously abandoned their settlements around 4,200 years ago. It is thought that infighting and invasions from other empires contributed, and now it seems a brutal season of storms also played a part. Scientists studied 4,100-year-old coral fossils in Tel Leilan in northeastern Syria, once the center of the Akkadian Empire. They showed a sudden and intense dry spell during the period just before the Akkadians disappeared. Evidence of strong winds associated with dust storms were also found within the fossils. Akkadian Empire key facts. Here's what you need to know. This is like one of those millennial websites.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
What to think about it?
This is a bunch of bullet points. I'll skip that. I guess I'll read it. The Akkadian Empire was the first ancient empire of Mesopotamia. It was based in the ancient city of Akkad in what is now Syria. The empire ruled the city and the surrounding region from the 22nd to 24th century BC. Some consider it to be the first true empire in world history. Those people are wrong. It stretched from what is now Iraq and Syria all the way to Jordan and perhaps even Cyprus. It excelled in innovative farming and irrigation techniques. The empire mysteriously disappeared around 4,000 years ago. Quote, "Our fossil samples are windows in time showing that variations in climate significantly contributed to the empire's decline," said Dr. Chiyoshi Watanabe from Hokkaido University in Japan. Further interdisciplinary research will help improve our understanding of connections between climate changes and human societies in the past. He noted that the official mark of the collapse of the Akkadian Empire remained the invasion of Mesopotamia by other populations. Dust storms and dry weather would have led to problems growing crops, researchers said. This would likely have sparked famine and social unrest. The abrupt intensification of surface winds would have caused aridification during winter in the Mesopotamia region, researchers wrote in their study.
Aridification? Like meaning
Aridification,
turning
yes.
into desert?
A-R-I-D-I.
Okay, yeah.
Fication.
Turning into desert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aridification. I've never
Yeah,
read
no,
that.
yeah.
I've never said that word before.
The base word is arid. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Aridification. Something like that.
Aridification. Aridification.
Aridification is probably right.
That's the way it came out.
Yeah.
Here, the winter season is critical for agriculture even today. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. In other archaeology news, the mystery of the real Noah's Ark flood could soon be solved thanks to an ancient Black Sea shipwreck graveyard.
Yeah.
That was an ad.
An ad.
Looked interesting. That's all I got, folks.
Well, that's good.
Climate change destroyed an ancient civilization.
Yes. That's
Just saying.
seems to be the norm.
Yeah.
Good deal.
They developed advanced irrigation techniques, and everything dried up, and they died.
Yeah. Do you think that the advanced irrigation techniques were a response to the slow drying up of, or that the irrigation could not combat the, in other words, like they had irrigation and everything was fine, and then suddenly it started drying up.
Yeah, well, if you're developing innovative irrigation techniques, then you don't have enough water,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in other words,
you don't have enough water for your crops.
Yeah, you're not farming where there's enough water to farm what you're farming. So
Right.
you develop these innovative techniques for irrigation.
Yeah.
So it doesn't,
So they either settled in the wrong place, or it started changing after they settled there.
Yeah,
Like,
because
that's my question.
they were around for
Yeah.
what did it say? 24 to the 22nd century. I guess the bottom line is I don't think 24th to the 22nd century BC. So, it's like it's 200 years, right?
Yeah, I think so. That's what they said. It was like 200 years,
Yeah.
and they disappeared.
Yep.
And it wasn't due to war or anything like that.
Some of it. There's some evidence that there were
Conflicts.
invasions, into Mesopotamia from other civilizations, but that wasn't the whole. I mean, that's not why they just vanished.
Right.
They vanished because,
it became a desert.
it became a desert, right? And then why would anyone invade after that?
yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's like you build all this stuff. I mean, that's just so. I don't know. One drought and one dust storm, or multiple dust storms, I guess, in a drought, destroys all your crops, and you're screwed.
Yeah.
You have to leave. Like, people are going to be leaving the area, but in mass.
Right.
As soon as either going to be mass starvation, or you're going to leave.
Yeah.
So it's like just a civilization destroyer right there.
Right.
And it just shows how
it takes one harvest to be bad for everybody to start bailing.
Oh yeah, and it just shows how fragile the balance is with our current situation.
Yeah.
We were talking to Uncharted X. Why can't I think of his
Ben.
And he's just like, it becomes chaos the moment they kill the power. It's just
Oh yeah, that's right.
One of these elements.
Again, yeah.
One of these little elements, stops working. Imagine it was for a year.
Oh yeah, that would be it.
It's done. You're done.
All the food storage.
Yep. You can only buy dry ice for a short period of time after the power goes out.
That's right. Yeah, the Watcher says 2300 to 2100 BC. Counting backwards is hard. It's 200 years.
All right. We're going to take a break.
That's right.
We'll be back. And we're back. Snake Bros podcast. About to venture into Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt by Christopher Dunn.
That's right.
Thank
Part
you,
2.
Russ. Part 2. That's right. And some new bumper music right there. Actually, extremely old
Extremely
music.
old bumper music. Yeah, very good.
Never before been used.
Yeah. But hopefully to be used more frequently in the future.
Yeah.
Because that's a good one from the
To keep
archives.
finding these old recordings. I actually have this old hard drive that I finally got an adapter for. Hooked it up and found all kinds of fun stuff on there. So we're trying to pull in some
Make some
ancient
microphone
relics
adjustments here. Yes, ancient relics. Digging out the relics. Okay, so the first episode we did of this book report on Chris Dunn's excellent Lost Technologies of Ancient Egypt, I read one of the forewords. There are two. So I'm going to read the second one for this one. This is from the guy who ended up being the CEO of the Danville Metal Stamping Company, which is the precision manufacturing place that Dunn works at. So this is from a guy named Judd C. Peck. He graduated from the University of Illinois, and he took the helm of Danville Metal Stamping Company in Danville and became its president and chief executive officer. So this is basically Dunn's boss. So let's see. He says, as a lawyer trained in the areas of evidence and the nature of proof, I have witnessed firsthand the disagreements that occur in the arena of ideas. Sometimes these disagreements make their way into a courtroom where a trial is held and a judgment made as to which opinion carries the weight of evidence. The evidence that ultimately convinces a judge and jury. The court reaches a decision in favor of the party or parties that presented that convincing evidence. Over the course of this book, Chris Dunn presents evidence that raises a multitude of challenging questions, introducing new ideas and opinions about the history of craftsmanship in Egypt. This work calls into question established paradigms and theories that have, for many decades, formed the basis of academic studies in schools and universities around the globe, and in volumes that occupy the shelves of virtually every library. But first, let me describe how I came to be involved in this debate. Leaving the formal practice of law in the late 1980s, I have, in the ensuing 2 decades, become a manufacturer. More specifically, a fabricator of sheet metal components for gas turbine engines at Danville Metal Stamping Company, Incorporated, located in Danville, Illinois, USA. It was here that I first met Dunn upon my arrival at Danville Metal in 1988. He preceded me at the company by a couple of years and was then serving in the capacity of laser engineer.
Laser.
I mean, like How much more awesome can you get? Laser engineer. He later became a manufacturing engineer and in 1995 brought his manufacturing and engineering skills as well as his judgment and insight to the post of human resources manager. As president and CEO, I devote a significant amount of time to human resources, and consequently, my contact with Dunn increased dramatically. At that time, I had little background or particular interest in Egypt, the pyramids, or ancient technologies and civilizations. Nonetheless, like most humans, I had a natural curiosity about how things are made or done and why. My curiosity then turned towards the subject that Dunn had spent the past 20 years studying in his spare time, and I was impressed by the enthusiasm and sense of wonder he had for it. Over breakfast and after a Sunday walk, Dunn would discuss his thoughts on ancient technologies. Those discussions were often supplemented by a photograph or other visual aid, such as an engineering drawing or a sketch on a napkin. We would also discuss the online controversies that swirled around his comments, theories, and questions raised in his first book, The Giza Power Plant. Dunn's analysis did not stop there. He instead applied the criticism he received to improve his methods and collect further evidence. In February of 2006, Dunn took another of his many trips to Egypt, this time with a tour group that visited a number of temples in Upper Egypt. Although he had first visited those temples in 2004, his exposure had been brief, and he was interested more closely inspecting temple artifacts, especially in the Luxor temple. This new expedition took Dunn deeper into and beyond the issues he had explored previously. He returned from the trip with a new and elevated interest in the accomplishments of the ancient Egyptians in the temples, particularly the statuary. His observations in the temples presented a new frontier of amazing feats, raising questions that were complementary to observations he had made in connection with granite boxes and other aspects of construction in the pyramids. In April and May of the same year, I took the opportunity to travel with Dunn to witness in person what I had only examined as photographic evidence. This included many looks through the viewfinder of his cameras, equipped with a telephoto lens, and then verifying the results captured by the camera. From personal observation, I can verify that in this book, Dunn has been true to the evidence he observed. As an engineer, Dunn was able to analyze his observations with CAD programs and geometrical analysis unavailable or incomprehensible to the average observer. Among other things, with advances in digital imaging, a technology used daily in manufacturing, his computer-assisted analysis afforded him the ability to see attributes that could not be seen or analyzed with the naked eye, even in the presence of the original artifact. Using his extensive skills and his tools as an engineer and a toolmaker, bringing to bear his decades of experience in manufacturing, Dunn was relentless in assessing what he could reach and, through his camera lenses, preserving what he saw. He also used his camera to capture what he could not necessarily reach and was thoughtful and creative in his approach. As the reader will witness in the pages that follow, Dunn thinks well in 3 dimensions and understands thoroughly the consequences of a particular test, comparison, or view. After our visit to the temples in 2006, Dunn studied his photographs and detected in the statues certain features that resemble tool marks, the kind of tool marks that a craftsperson or engineer would recognize. Realizing that he had focused on collecting geometric information and neglected to look for evidence of tool marks, another trip was planned and taken in November of 2008 to further authenticate and more finely focus on what his previous photographs indicated. On this trip, I was able, through Dunn's camera, to see the tool marks on the cheek of one of the Ramses in the temple at Karnak, even though the head of that statue was some 45 feet in the air.
Wow.
I was later able to examine the resulting photograph, as can the reader later in this book. I vividly remember my first and then every subsequent visit to the Luxor temple. Although smaller than the nearby temple at Karnak, the Luxor temple is impressive. The different areas of the temple provided an interesting variety of architecture, from the Hall of the Ramses to the colonnade to the plaza to the inner temple. Each had something different to offer, and yet they harmoniously fit together. The imposing Ramses statues hewn out of huge, solid blocks of granite, the immense columns, and the fact that the temple, its contents, and its surrounding have existed for thousands of years caused me to wonder about the influence it had on the civilization that built it. From these thoughts, my mind was opened to a new awareness. As I am confronted with the evidence, both in Dunn's book and from my own personal observation, I find myself wondering, among other things, how the technology of the ancient Egyptians that allowed them to carve and shape stone as they did was applied in other areas of their society, such as healthcare or dentistry, for example. In our society, advancements in one area of technology are quickly spread to other areas in which those advancements might apply. Wouldn't the ancient Egyptians have done the same? Yeah, I think so.
That's a brilliant observation.
While my background as an attorney and a manufacturer qualifies me to evaluate Dunn's work objectively, I am still awestruck by what he has revealed in his studies and by the disparity between his findings and the understanding I gained in the course of my traditional education on the subject. If, metaphorically speaking, truth lies at the heart of an onion, I have witnessed firsthand as Dunn peeled away layers of that onion to get closer to the heart of technologies employed in ancient Egypt, revealing previously unaddressed questions. While the most obvious and prominent of those questions is how these ancient artifacts were made to exhibit such remarkable geometry and precision, the second most obvious that follows quickly on the heels of the first is why. At this time, there are no certain answers to these questions, and it is human nature to fill the void of the unanswered question with something. Those who ignore questions because the answers are not apparent are disingenuous. I am reminded of this quotation from John Stuart Mill in Considerations on Representative Government. Quote, "From despairing of a cure, there is too often but one step to denying the disease. And from this follows dislike to having a remedy proposed, as if the proposer were creating a mischief instead of offering relief."
Yes.
A sculptard is defined by Webster's as a person who questions the validity or authenticity of something purporting to be factual. While the same dictionary defines cynical as distrusting or disparaging the motives of others. In his work, Chris Dunn invites us all to be skeptical of things that we may have never really questioned, while at the same time he invites rigorous skepticism of his own observations. This skepticism is healthy and helpful. It is not cynicism, however. It is not contempt for the theories or ideas of others, or for those who proffer those theories or ideas. It is a questioning and a testing of one's own ideas and theories, as well as those of others. In reading and contemplating the pages that follow, I entreat the reader to be skeptical, but not cynical. In exercising skepticism while reading Dunn's work, also bear in mind this quotation from the wizard in the play Wicked. Quote, "Back where I come from, we believe all sorts of things that aren't true. We call it history." Unquote. Yes. Perhaps a more famous Winston Churchill quote. Quote, "History is written by the victors," unquote, should be considered. The history of Egypt traditionally taught in the West has, for the most part, been written by Western scholars who followed on the heels of their armies. I am confident that the obvious sophistication of the ancient Egyptians revealed in this book will, in due time, prompt Western scholars and others around the world to re-examine what has been written about ancient Egypt and to consider what else the citizens of that ancient civilization, by whatever means, accomplished. Jude Peck.
And that guy's a fantastic writer. He should write a book.
Yeah.
That's great.
So I thought that was cool because, well, the first intro that I read in the last part of this series, he talked more about the objects that we talked about in that show.
Yeah.
In this case, this guy talks mostly about the temples and stuff, which we are going to talk about on this show.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool.
But it's pretty cool to get that insight into sort of, Dunn's like the sort of,
and also it's
from
his
this
boss.
guy's perspective of how he went through this sort of obsession and having his mind blown every time he goes back to Egypt and just going off into these different, just first discovering the Toolmarks. And I mean, that's really cool.
So
This is complex geometry. And then suddenly he's like, oh, there's a tool mark right there.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is on part one, I did this with a paper book, a physical book. And that was really hard for me. And you could hear me flipping pages trying to find stuff or whatever. So
books are hard.
Yeah. So what I did was I went and bought the digital version for doing the second part, which allows me to make a lot of marks and, so I have much better notes this time, but I'm still going to try to, I have quotations from him that I want to read, but I'm still going to try to just sort of tell the story I'm
Yeah.
not going to just read out of the book, but I do have a lot of quotations that I want to read. So
Cool.
hopefully we have enough time to get to them all because they're great.
I'll try to pay attention.
Pay attention to what?
I'll try not to like read other things like The Watcher while you're reading to me.
I see. So in the beginning of the book, he talks about, he's basically looking at what he calls the, they're called the Headjet, which are the crowns on these enormous statues.
The bowling pin hats.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I want to read this first quotation from him. He says, "The best description of the Headjet is that it is similar to a bowling pin that is tilted at an angle. When it's combined with the Deshret, it adopts precise geometries that make it more complicated to manufacture than a shape that could be produced on a lathe." So Chris Dunn agrees with us that they are bowling pin hats.
Yeah. In champagne buckets.
Right.
That's the only part that he left out.
Right. The best description of the Headjet is that it is similar to a bowling pin.
It's so obvious.
I know. But the thing is that so when you look at those headdresses, it's what Chris Dunn finds out, and he does this through multiple trips. He has to keep going back, right? Because he takes pictures and then he's like, "Wait, I didn't get the right." Because he analyzes the pictures when he gets home, and he's like, he finds things in those photographs that he needs to go back and get better pictures of. This happens multiple times throughout the book.
And I'm wondering too, maybe you'll get to this, but he would have to, I imagine he would have to measure to center his tripod on the area that he's trying to do. If he's wanting to put it into a CAD program and then put, measure the geometry of it, you have to be like dead center or exactly 45 degrees to this angle whatever. And that must have been really
So he talks about how so when he's trying to get facial geometries or whatever, he talks about how so what I did was I set the camera up on the tripod, and of course a lot of times the face he's trying to take a picture of is 45 feet above it. Right. So he's got it backed way up, and then there's columns every 12 feet in some cases, and they're enormous. So he has to find the right spot to put the camera, and then he makes it so that in the viewfinder of the camera, the tip of the nose is just hitting the cheek, the outside of the cheek.
I see.
And that allows him to get that perfect profile image from both sides of the statue at the what you would call 45s. It's called a 3/4 profile in art.
Okay.
Where the very tip of the nose is touching the outside line of the cheek when you're looking at the face turned in that direction.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. And then he does it.
And then I guess if you knew the exact height of the nose and he could measure from the base to his position on the camera, he could say what exact angle.
Yeah.
Of course, his camera might be able to tell him what angle he's tilted at.
And he's using, he has to go back. He's like, I've got to go back with optical lenses instead of using digital zoom and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So he gets better and better equipment and then keeps going back. And then he has to arrange to stay there for 6 hours when most of the tours just rush you through real fast.
Yeah.
And he tells some pretty funny stories about being in various taxis and cabs in Cairo. He's like, this one guy hands him a business card when he's at the hotel. And he takes the business card and it's got the name of the cab company and the number or whatever. And then it's a picture of a Mercedes on there. And he's like, okay. And so he starts asking the guy, how much will it cost to get us to this place tomorrow morning or whatever. And the guy gives him a quote and then takes him out to see the cab. And it's like a station wagon. But it's really nice. And he's like, okay, it's not a Mercedes, but it's really nice. Then in the morning, the guy shows up with a much older, much more beat up station wagon. Chris Dunn,
snake oil salesman.
He gets in the cab, and the guy drives over to a house, and a very drunk dude comes out and gets in the cab, and the other guy goes inside, and then that drunk guy drives him to the temple.
Oh no!
It was hilarious. I mean, the whole thing was a scam, from the Mercedes all the way down. Every stage of it was a scam. And then he said when he got there, the guy held his luggage hostage until he gave him more money. So,
oh man,
funny stories about that stuff. He's very Chris. He seems very good natured about the whole thing. But so it's hard for me to. It's gonna be hard for me to synthesize what he is saying about these temple artifacts that he's looking at, because he gets extremely technical. Okay, I mean, he's showing you how, but basically, if you think of the bowling pin hat. I'm going to try to say what he figures out with this after multiple trips, multiple photographs, and all these analyses. And then he finds ones that are sitting on the ground, right? Because he's looking at these statues and they're so tall. And then he goes around and he's like, oh, okay, here's one that's outside the temple and it's just the head, like it got broken off a statue somewhere, and it has the thing on it. So it's like at person level, right? It's enormous, but right there at ground level. And he's able to run his hands over it. And they're made of granite.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's like, look, first of all, it's too complex to have been made on a lathe. Like, that's the first part. You can't make this object on a lathe because it's offset.
Yeah, there's no center point that you could put on this.
Right. I mean, it does have you could find a center point, but it'd be wobbling on one side.
The tool would have to be moving in and out
right
at the same rate of the object spinning.
Once per revolution. Yeah.
Right.
So he's like, you can't make it on a lathe. But he basically ends up figuring out that so the top of the quote unquote bowling pin is a sphere, a perfect sphere. He calls it the top knot, but no one knows what they are. But it's a perfect sphere. Okay. But it's a perfect sphere is contained inside of it. The thing itself isn't a perfect sphere.
Yeah, because it tapers off like in a tangent somewhere.
Yeah, just like a bowling pin, there's a perfect sphere in the top there. It's abstract.
Right.
Right. But the whole bowling pin is made out of an infinite series of spheres of different radii.
Okay.
That's how he describes it.
So the top at least is one hemisphere of a total sphere.
Yeah.
Coming down.
Yeah. And more because it gets smaller.
It's getting
right
smaller
below.
on the other side. Okay.
Right.
It's more than a hemisphere.
Right. So he says to imagine it as an infinite series of spheres of changing radii that when you stack them all together makes this perfectly smooth shape. And you're just being able to touch the very outside edges of an infinite number of spheres. That's how to imagine a bowling pin.
Gotcha.
And this is how you can think of it mathematically because you can draw it. You draw a series.
Circles. If you're looking at the profile of it, you can sit there and use a compass and draw circles ever getting smaller to the neck.
They start out a certain size and then they get a little bit wider and then they start to get smaller and they get very small at the neck and then they get wider again to make the top.
Okay.
An infinite series of spheres of changing radii. And then there's a mathematical progression of the radii change that you can describe. And this is how you would program it basically. Right?
Yeah.
So, but he says you can't do that with this. Number one, it is an infinite series of spheres that does all these changing things, but the problem is it can't be turned on a lathe. So it has to be like what GMA called, a 5-axis.
Because the spheres are not only moving on one axis, they're actually moving on more than one axis. They're moving on at least two.
Following the center line of the spheres is also a curve.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's cool.
So he was like, one part of the book, he was like, if 50 years ago, if someone had given us this object to make, right? Because he talks a lot about how he got into manufacturing like 50 years ago, or 50 years prior to the making of this book. And he says that the technology has changed so drastically from that time. He's like, he's like, you can see it and any of you can do this, just get online and check it. Go look at the gaps, like so on a car from 50 years ago, look at the gaps in the doors from the door to the body.
Hood and the fender and all that.
Versus today, right? And then also look at the shapes that everything is on a car versus today. Everything back then was square. And had straight lines, and now everything is all these molded, very complex shapes that can only be made by computer-assisted, molding. Basically, a computer has to come out there and you have to design the whole thing in an abstract place, in a code, basically, and then the computer can build this, however it builds it, whether it's stamping metal or it's spraying something or molding plastic. But to get these very, very organic curves, which are artistic, right? He's like, you go back 50 years and you see the engineering sense and everything. Like engineers were tasked with building your computer tower, not 50 years ago, but so you got this box that's like beige. Because engineers don't care what it looks like. But today you go by a computer tower and they're all sleek and have all these organic curves and they've got lights everywhere and So it's the same thing as like the state of the technology has allowed artists to come in and make them visual. Okay. So he says the thing about Egypt is that's happened already. With their statuary.
Yeah.
The engineering concepts are all there and they're so good that the artists could come in and make them visually appealing to the point where it drives some people to tears. Like, it has enormous effect on people. You walk into some of these temples he's talking about And he's like, it's the effect on the psyche is amazing. So
Wow.
he basically is saying you see the same effect that today we have. Just look at your computer mouse. You know, it's got all these curves on it that are a series of very simple geometric designs, whether they're being cut out of the object or they're added into it. But all these changes, whereas a long time ago it would have been a box with buttons on the top, right?
Right.
It was functional, but not pretty.
Yeah.
But today they're beautiful looking, and that's because people are visual. So when you go to a store and you're looking at a mouse, you're like, man, that one looks badass. And it's because of all these curves. It's because some artist has been allowed to design the body. The
Yeah.
engineer built all this. You open it up and there's none of that
Yeah,
shit.
it's
There's
square and
I mean, there is beauty in some of this circuitry components. With there's a symmetry of lines and stuff in the circuitry. But once you open it up, you're like, oh, okay. All that gorgeousness goes away, and it's just beauty of function.
I think I remember seeing something too about Apple in their newer computers. They had artists come in also for even the circuitry. So when the computers are taken apart,
They're still gorgeous.
It's beautiful inside the way
okay.
it's all designed and all this kind of stuff.
Nice.
I don't remember where I saw that
But yes,
read
Apple
that.
is a great example of
Starting out with boxes and ending up with beauty. I mean,
Yes,
seriously,
and-
the Apple IIgs was like
Yeah.
beige box.
right. Noisy too.
But that's a profound point too about design. Like we often talk about form follows function and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But what he's pointing out is that once you get to a certain level in your manufacturing, then part of the function is the beauty itself. And
Right.
so then your form obviously would follow that.
Right. And he also
Artistic expression.
He takes a great amount of time to point out that the statuary, at least in some cases, in some cases, the statues of Ramses. Watcher just put up a picture of the Macintosh. Is that the
Macintosh 2.
Yeah, it's just a box, beige, very ugly.
Wally.
Wally. So some of the statues are also columns, right?
Yeah.
And he points out how these columns, and they're enormous columns, and they're load bearing, right? So they're holding things up. And he points out how the arms and the legs are all they're not separate. They're not like Greek statuary where they're actually making the human form, and you can see every line and the knuckle and the skin and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
These statues are beautiful and they're enormous, but they're columns first and foremost.
Yeah.
Right? But there are other statues that are similar in scope in terms of size that are not load-bearing and have no function. And thus, he's like, so what are they doing here? This has no, I mean, it's cut into the shape of a person, and it has no function architecturally. So it can only be for beauty, basically, or to be in,
For aesthetics.
yeah, for aesthetics. And he points out that, like, in some cases, the statues are, even if they're not load-bearing, they're so huge that they have to bear their own load.
Right, yeah.
So he points out that in the seated Ramses, their backs are very straight, but their elbows, they make the upper arm long enough to where the elbow can rest on the legs.
leg, yeah.
That way it's a part, so the arm is a part of the whole body. There's no separation anywhere.
Right.
Because they're so enormous that everything's heavy. And they don't make any weak points by having the arm
Separated from the body.
cutting
yeah.
a hole out somewhere where they would be separate, right?
Yeah.
And he points out that, like, if you look at the feet, and he's got some pictures of the feet, and they're, these gigantic colossi feet. But the toes have no knuckles. They're very smooth. They have toenails, but there's no knuckles or anything. There's just, it's almost abstract.
Yeah.
They make enough lines where your brain just puts the rest of the details in there. Like, I wouldn't even have noticed that there were no knuckles until he pointed it out. Just because when you're looking at them, you're like, yeah, okay, I see the toes or whatever. And then he shows you up close, like, look, they're just straight lines here and curves. then make the toes and the fingers the same way. The hands are the same way. But he does a whole study on ears of these gigantic statues. So the ears are all way up there. And he's trying to find weird places to put his camera to take pictures of the ears. And he's showing how they're identical. You know, from one side to the other, from across this way to that way. You can draw lines and everything, and they're perfect. And then he does this with a lot of people have seen the work he's done on the Ramses face, where he's got all the circles showing you how everything is. But what I found interesting in this particular study,
bilateral symmetry.
Yes, it's got perfect bilateral symmetry. What I found interesting was his work on the lips, because he's like, look, you can just looking at the face, the lips are something different. There was a completely different tool used here than what was used to make the rest of the machine.
Make the rest of the statue.
I'm sorry, the statue, yeah. Let's see if I can find this. Okay, well, let me read this quote. This is one of the quotes I marked in here. He says, conception, execution, and verification are the phases of manufacturing. The ancient Egyptians must have used all three, with the last phase, verification, confirming the success of the first two. The only phase available for us to study is the last phase. So this is just, I thought this was a good point, that like you have to do all three of these things to get these objects.
Yeah.
You have to conceive of it, and you have to make the plans, and they're very complex plans because all these curves have to be defined in all three dimensions.
Yeah.
Right? Then you have to execute that plan on something, some material, which they did in granite, which is like one of the hardest materials that we work with even today. And then you have to verify
That it's been
your
done
execution
right. Yeah.
compared to your conception. Yeah. And the verification, so all three of these stages take multiple tools of trade that have taken us, that we haven't developed until the last 50 years, is one of his points. You know, like there in every single one of those stages, you have to have all these tools of math, and then all these tools of machinery and materials for cutting tips and stuff, right? And all these, and then you have to have enormous workforces that are hidden all over the place making these things or coming up with these ideas in order to come up with the machine that can execute your conception. And then you have to have a whole other set of tools that GMA gave us a lesson on in History of Precision to check your work after you're done. The auto collimators and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I know I skipped around there, but I'll get back to what I was talking about. Let's see. I want to make sure I go in order here.
Well, we can just take a break and you can find it.
Oh, yeah. Are we at the break?
Yeah, good enough.
All right.
We're not going to sit around and just make them wait.
Oh, yeah. That's what we're going to do. No. We'll take a break.
No?
Just let them wait. I found the next part.
That's cool.
I'll get there.
We're right there. All right. I'm going to delete this part. So, we'll be back.
It's still there. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, with some funky sounds here from Dozer Dan Bassman.
Funk Hill represent.
Kyle from $50 Dynasty, bringing the funk. Brothers of the Serpent podcast. By the way, I saw a comment on YouTube that said, somebody was like, you guys are starting to sound like a broken record.
Is it true?
Well, I just wanted to let him know that we're going to keep talking about this stuff.
Maybe it's the intros.
I don't know.
It's the very. Maybe he only listens to the first 30 seconds of the show.
He's like, this is a broken record.
It's not the same every time. Just go listen to the first 10 shows and before we got it all together.
Yeah.
Still getting it together.
Yeah.
But
still happening. Okay, so I was mentioning the ears on the statue, and he makes a great point here about, first of all, and anyone can imagine an ear is a complex object. Very, very complex, right? And he does all kinds of, he's like, look, I took pictures and I'm like, Fibonacci spiral, no, and he's drawing lines and circles and ellipses, and he's like, hey, he's not getting it. The ear is incredibly complex, these ears that they're using on these giant statues. Okay, but they're also stylized. When you look at them, you're like, that's not a human ear, right? That's not how I would draw one if I was just drawing with a pencil, if I was sketching. Like when I used to draw comics, I had a way of drawing the human ear. And it's very simple. It took like 6 lines, I guess, that had curves. But
I remember you teaching me that.
Yeah. But the statues don't use that same. They look like ears, but they don't look like ears at the same time. You know what they are, right?
Yeah.
But he says, of note, also, is the close alignment of the ears. Figure 2.2 shows clearly Ramses' left ear with some of its upper portion missing. In figure 2.3, this is evident, but at the same time, the ear cavity is very close to a perfect match. To be able to define the geometry of the ear is a challenge. To reproduce the geometry in 3 dimensions on opposite surfaces with 3 feet of granite in between these points.
Wow.
And to control their positions, as precisely as these photos indicate, dispels forever the notion of ancient sculptors chipping away with stone hammers and stone or copper chisels. In other words, the heads of the statue are so big that a sculptor on one side working on one ear cannot see the other ear from anywhere where he's working.
You'd have to back away far enough to be able to check your work to see if it's the same.
And there's just no way of doing that and getting them perfect, which they are. Exactly aligned, perfectly horizontal. He draws all these lines, like looking at the statue from the front, and you can see that they're exactly in the same place. And the lines go perfectly across eyebrow or eye line marks and all this kind of stuff. That they clearly defined all these things across a gigantic 3-dimensional object.
Yeah,
in multiple areas. Where if you were looking at a top-down view, the line that's following is actually very complicated. You see what I'm saying? Like when you're looking at the statue face on, you can draw a straight line across the tops of the ears, the tops of the eye lines, and the other ear, right? But then if you look at the statue from the top down, if you're way above it and you're looking straight down at the top of its head, that line that we were able to draw straight is very complicated. It goes over the nose and all this stuff.
Yeah. For those of you up north, build a snowman on one side of your fence and then go build an identical snowman on the other side of your fence. Can't do it.
Yeah. Or just try to put that snowman's arms in the same place where when you back away, it's perfectly symmetrical. Where you can jab them in there in the same place where anywhere you look at it and take pictures, they look exactly the same. Arms are at the same angles. They're jabbed into the giant ball of snow in the same spot. Basically, it's like that. But
for those of you in Australia, build a sandcastle on one side of your umbrella.
And then build the exact same mirror image of that sandcastle on the other side of Australia. So let's see. The next mark I've got here, he says, the contoured surfaces of Ramses' symmetrical face would be familiar to designers of everyday products that are created routinely today with computer algorithms known as non-uniform non-uniform rational B-splines, or NURBS, which allows them to smoothly morph one shape to another with unbroken perfection. By using NURBS, computer-aided design programs create contours of airplane wings, turbine blades, and even the computer keyboard at your fingertips. Surfaces are now routinely designed and manufactured to the apparent precision of Ramses' head. Incredibly, the ancient Egyptians were also able to routinely craft Ramses' head and achieve the same results again and again, from the north to the south. Egypt,
Yeah.
which is hundreds of miles.
Yeah.
So look at your computer keyboard. You've got in one key, if you think about it, there are numerous basic shapes involved in making that key. A big sphere is involved in like taking the little indent cutout that makes the top. A really, 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 really big sphere is floating abstractly above that key. And you're using the very bottom of it to cut out, right? So if you think of starting the key as a cube, and then think of all the shapes you have to use to cut out to end up with that flat key with a very slight indentation in it.
Yeah.
So that's what he's talking about. So you have to start thinking in 3D modeling terms. And excuse me, I have some experience
Use that
with
button
this.
I bought you.
Yeah. I have some experience in this because I did this for a while. Basically, I was modeling 3D objects, complex 3D objects for some work I was doing back in the day. So I would have to build a 3D model of some machine, and I would get a bunch of different pictures of it. And the way I would do the 3D modeling is the 3D program gives you a series of basic shapes. So you have to make this very complicated object using only basic shapes, but you could use those. You could make a shape cut out of another shape, or add to another shape, right? So how do you make, like a? How do you end up if you only have cylinders, spheres, and cubes, and cones? How do you end up making something that looks like a centrifuge?
Yeah.
Well, you have a ton of cubes and spheres and cones. Like just to make a hexagonal bolt head is a complicated process, and I've got a bunch of cubes around a piece of a cone.
Yeah.
And each one of those cubes is using one flat space to cut a part of the cone off so that I end up with this hexagon. Right? Yeah. And then I combine all those objects together. So when you look at the 3D program without all the maps I gave it to make it a beautiful graphical object, is just this huge mass of all these shapes in line drawing, basically. So the same thing is happening with most objects. You can look at any object lying around you. If it was poured into a mold or whatever, you can think of it as a series of simple shapes, either cutting out or adding to other simple shapes to make that shape. And then you look at, basic objects, you're like, how many of those shapes does it take to make this object? And how would I do it?
And when they're actually, like if you're using a tool, like say some type of CNC machine or whatever to make these cuts, the computer takes these abstract shapes that are, like on the design, the shapes are all around the object that you're wanting the CNC machine to cut out.
Yeah.
But you don't, when the CNC machine goes to actually make the cuts, it's making these long curves that are described by circles on a computer program, but the circles or the spheres or whatever don't actually exist in the real world, or even on the tool.
Right.
So it's not like if you want to make that indentation on the keyboard that you need some massive sphere. It's just that massive sphere is what defines
it's conceptual. Yeah.
the curve that is taken out of the top of the key of the keyboard.
Right. Yeah. Now with CAD, you could actually just draw that. You don't need a whole bunch of basic shapes, but that's what you basically start with. It's defining all these things, and you can.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying with the CNC machine, for example. It may make one curve in a cut.
Yeah,
and that curve is actually defined by a bunch of circles of different diameters.
Yes,
different radii.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Every object you have that was manufactured with precision stuff is conceptually comprised of a series of simple objects of Pythagorean what is it? It's not Pythagoras. Platonic solids, basically.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Plato.
Plato.
It's made of Plato.
Yeah. Okay, so he's going back to the photograph of the Ramses face. Euclidean geometry.
Says the watcher.
Yeah. Euclidean geometry. So he says grids, graphs, and charts are used to convey information and to plot and organize work. With this in mind, therefore, I took the photograph of Ramses and laid a grid over it. Of course, my first task was to establish the size and number of the cells used in the grid. I assumed that the features of the face would lead me to the answer, and I studied which features were most prominent. After musing over this question for a while, I took a chance on a grid that was based on the dimensions of the mouth. It seemed to me that the mouth had something to tell us due to its unnatural shape, and he points out multiple times how these Ramses statues, the heads, the smile is very Mona Lisa-esque. The entire rest of the face is at rest, but then there's this like almost a smile that a shape of the mouth that's making a smile that no one can actually make in real life. You can't pull your cheeks up like that and make that smile without pulling all the muscles of the rest of your face around. But you can see that the rest of the face is not. So it's very enigmatic, very Mona Lisa-like. She has this little smirk, but the rest of her face is like totally blank, right?
Yeah.
But the Ramses face has a...
She has the opposite of a bitch face or whatever.
Yeah, she has
when it's at rest, she's smiling.
Right. She has the resting smirk face.
Is that... should I delete that? I don't know.
No.
Bitch face. What do you call it? Resting Ramses face.
Yeah, it's the resting Ramses face. Well, he comes to this interesting conclusion. He's like, look, he figures it out eventually. All of those heads of those statues, he's like, when you're looking at them, there's a couple that are now on the ground. The statues collapsed, and the head's broken off. So there are places where the face is either just sitting there on the ground, like sitting on its broken neck, so you can look straight at it, or they're laying, looking upwards at the sky, so you can look down at them. And the mouth is huge; it's be the size of this keyboard or bigger. They're giant. So you see this weird smile. But he eventually realizes, well, they were all intended to be 45 or 50 feet above any person walking into the temple, whatever they are. And he's like, at that angle, if it was just drawn like a regular mouth, he would look like he was having this enormous frown.
Yeah.
So they made this exaggerated smile so that when you're looking at it from down there, he looks like he's smiling slightly. Okay. Smiling very slightly. He's giving you this like little bitty smile.
Like a welcoming smile.
Right. He's not frowning at you, right? Yeah. And he shows this. It's very interesting. If you, I thought of this when I was reading this. There's a Japanese mask that they used to use for theater. And I think maybe this was done elsewhere too, but I specifically know the Japanese one. So there's a mask that the people put on, maybe kabuki theater. So they put on this mask and it's got a face, a very basic face drawn on it. And depending on if you have your head tilted back or tilted forward, you're smiling or frowning. It doesn't change anything but the angle that you see the mask at.
It's because of the forward curve on the mask, I guess.
Right, so it's got this line for its mouth, right? And if you look down, it's got this big frown on it. And if you tilt back, it's the other way. So you can like look like you're smiling or it's weird.
Cool.
Yeah.
So when my face is at rest, I look like I'm mad. So if I tilt my head back more when I'm wanting to relax my face, people will think I'm happy. Because I have the resting bee face.
Maybe it was the other way around. When you tilt it back, it's frowning.
That's what I was thinking, because the curve is actually a forward curve.
Yeah.
And if you tilt back, it looks like it's frowning.
Right. That's what it is.
Okay, so I just need to look down.
Yeah. Look down.
Like I'll be looking. I'll just look for arrowheads. People will think I'm happy, which I will be if I'm looking for arrowheads. All right. Anyway, moving on.
So he says, okay, so he's going to make the grid based on the mouth. It seemed to me that the mouth had something to tell us due to its unnatural shape. So I placed a grid with cell dimensions that were the same height and half the width of the dimensions of the mouth. It was then a simple matter to generate circles based on the geometry of the facial features. I didn't expect, though, that they would line up with grid lines in so many locations. In fact, I was astounded by this discovery. Going through my mind was, okay, now when does this cease to be a coincidence and become a reflection of truth? And he says, Pythagoras meets Ramses. So plumbing the grid for further information, I discovered that Ramses' mouth had the same proportions as a classic 3-4-5 right triangle. The idea that the ancient Egyptians had known about the Pythagorean triangle before Pythagoras, and that they may have even taught Pythagoras its concepts, has been discussed by scholars, though not without controversy. Ramses presented me with the grid based on the Pythagorean triangle, whether it was the ancient Egyptians' intentions or not. He says this a lot in the book. He finds these mathematical concepts in there that are supposed to be not that old, basically. You know, 4th dynasty statues shouldn't have Pythagoras in them,
Right.
according to the standard model.
The standard models, I mean, the standard modelists do that all the time. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
well, yeah, that's, I mean, if you can find any kind of beautiful geometry just in an average stool.
Yeah.
If you-
And I'm like, try it.
yeah.
Show me. And it doesn't seem that hard. Like Chris Dunn has done all this work. He's actually done, you know.
Yeah,
all
but they're
this
kind of
work.
making the point even that the stool is like made with lathes and all kinds
Yeah,
of
that's true. Yeah,
But anyway.
that's true. So with the mouth, he ends up with I can't remember if I marked any of this. Yeah, here it is. He says, I puzzled over Ramses' unnatural smile, but it seemed to me that it wasn't shaped this way to merely achieve a Pythagorean triangle. Perhaps there was another reason for its appearance. Creating a line and drawing from the features of the face and then removing the photograph revealed an image that was uncomplicated and distinct. Then it dawned on me that I was studying a face that was not in situ but close to eye level. Originally, the head was connected to a statue that was approximately 40 feet tall. The seated Ramses figures at Luxor tower above the tourists at the temple. The proportion of both the people and their interaction with the statue has some bearing on the design of the statue, as we can discern from the face. Ramses' smile appears exaggerated only when we view the head at the same elevation. When viewed from the ground, the smile from the shortest to the tallest statue, 40 to 60 feet, appears more natural. We can see one illustration of this effect when we look at our own mouth in the mirror, then notice that when we raise our head, our mouth appears downturned. To understand this effect even further, we can hold an egg vertically by the ends and draw a straight line horizontally from one side to the other. When we rotate the egg either toward or away from ourselves, the straight line curves. Obviously, when the ancient Egyptians visited the temple, they preferred to meet with a beneficent-looking king rather than one who had a frown frozen on his face. Thus, the seemingly unnatural smile of Ramses when we view it straight on was calculated to appear natural via the perspective of someone at ground level.
That's just brilliant in and of itself.
Yeah.
That's great.
So he talks about how they did this all over the place, and that he even goes into how the Greeks, like they've been working on the Parthenon for like the Parthenon took like according to Greek records, like 10 years to build. Well, they've been working on restoring it for over 30 years, and they can't do it because it isn't as simple as it looks like. The columns have these very slight outward curves so that they appear straight when you're looking at them from the ground.
Wow.
Right? Because if they didn't do that, there would be this optical illusion that would make them look skewed from each other. So the Greeks did these very slight bulges so that the column appears to be straight when you're standing in front of them.
That's crazy.
So with the he ends up realizing that so first of all, he finds some errors. This is really interesting. He finds errors in these statues. Now, again, we're talking about a head that's on the ground in some cases. So he's able to look very closely at them, and he sees, I think I marked this, so I'll get to it at some point, but he finds places where there was an error made in making the mouth shape, and then it was corrected. And so this results in one of the statues, the mouth is actually deeper. It's set deeper into the stone than all the rest of them, so it has this very sharp line going around the outside of the lips. And he's like, when you look very closely at that line, you see all these tool marks. And they're single swipes of the tool. And it leaves this like point, right? Where this new tool was being used to make this. So they like, imagine they made the face, and where the mouth was, they just left a protrusion. And then a separate specialized tool came in to make the whole mouth. A very complex or very specialized tool that was different from what they used to make the rest of the face. And they made an error on one of them. And so they cut the mouth again a little deeper to get rid of the error. For the most part, there's still some of it left in the corner. And so there's this sharp line that nobody bothered to clean up because it was going to be 40 feet above you anyway, and you can't see it unless you have telephoto lenses and stuff.
Man, that's wild.
And he's pointing out also that none of these statues are polished. In other words, the tools that they used to cut the statues were so precise that they didn't have to polish them. He's like, they're like when you do polishing, there are lines left that are clear, and there's also like there's patterns that are left from the polishing that you can tell. These statues aren't polished. And it's very faint, but in the right light, at the right angle, with the right cameras and lenses and stuff, you can see these lines that follow contours of faces that are like tool lines, basically. What he called...
like trails of the tool.
Yeah, he called them... I can't remember the word, but basically like trails, yeah. Yes. Let's see, what else do I have marked in here? Okay, so now we're at the Serapeum. He says, the entrance hall of the Serapeum is larger in width and height than the tunnels where the boxes are installed. So this is basically, he's describing it. Cut into the walls are rectangular depressions that bring to mind images of large cutting tools boring into rock to remove material quickly. Now, we were talking about this with Ben. I was asking about the quote-unquote niches in the walls. He says, along their vertical length, the bottoms of some of the depressions are concave, while others are flat. Some have an arched top and others do not. The arrangement of depressions is haphazard and does not appear to conform to any particular design criteria. And he shows a picture of this, which I'll have to put in the show notes. Yeah, look.
Yeah,
So-
it looks like a bunch of weird windows that are not all
Right.
just like different angles.
Random. And you can see like ripples in the backs, but that may be the stone, layers of the stone. So inset into some of these, they found stele or statuary or whatever, but he's actually thinking that this is probably more likely, they look like Toolmarks to him. He doesn't comment a whole lot on it. But he does remark on how closely these things appear the same as a lot of the marks that are around the giant unfinished obelisk.
Yes.
And so he's like, they were just cutting out these tunnels really quickly with this tool that could take enormous bites out of the stone. But there was not necessarily a whole lot of precision involved in doing that. They didn't really care about the tunnel walls. They
Right.
cared about the boxes. You all right? Eyes burning?
Yeah, I think must have been this hand that I've been digging into this tobacco bag with.
no,
I just
yeah.
like rubbed my eye and
no.
it's burning. Big rookie move.
So he has this great quote from Strabo describing it's a bunch of stuff where he's going on about the Serapeum again. Strabo, the first person to have written about the Serapeum and a recorder whose work has survived the centuries. In his geography, Strabo writes, quote, there is also a temple of Serapis situated in a very sandy spot where the sand is accumulated in masses by the wind. Some of the sphinxes which we saw were buried in this sand up to the head, and one half only of others were visible. Hence we may conceive the danger should anyone, in his way to the temple, be surprised by a sandstorm. Right, because as Strabo was walking to the temple, there are big sphinx statues that are like half buried. In some places, only the head's sticking out. So he was like, oof, this is a dangerous place. But the reason I mark this is because of what he goes through here. He says, in Le Serapeum de Memphis, Mariette, who is a Egyptologist, who was 1821 to 1881. That was when he was doing his work. That was when he lived. Okay. So he says, in Le Serapeum de Memphis, Mariette writes with no small amount of intensity and passion and reveals a mind that believes it is on the trail of a major discovery. So when I was reading this, I was like, oh my God, you could tell the dude was excited, right? So this is from that guy's journals. He says, did it not seem that Strabo had written this sentence to help us rediscover, after over 18 centuries, the famous temple dedicated to Serapis? It was impossible to doubt it. This buried sphinx, the companion of 15 others I had encountered in Alexandria and Cairo, formed with them, according to the evidence, part of the avenue that led to the Memphis Serapeum. So in other words, it's been lost. And this guy thinks he's on the trail of it again because he's reading Strabo and he's like, holy shit, the sphinx is in the sand. I saw those. Right? So he says, it did not seem to me possible to leave others the credit and profit of exploring this temple whose remains a fortunate chance had allowed me to discover and whose location henceforth would be known. Undoubtedly, many precious fragments, many statues, many unknown texts were hidden beneath the sand upon which I stood. These considerations made all my scruples disappear. At that instant, I forgot my mission, obtaining Coptic text from the monasteries. I forgot the patriarch, the convents, the Coptic and Syriac manuscript, Lenet Bey himself. And it was thus, on the 1st of November of 1850, during one of the most beautiful sunrises I had ever seen in Egypt, that a group of 30 workmen, working under my orders near that Sphinx, were about to cause such total upheaval in the conditions of my stay in Egypt. Like, he just drops everything, dig right there.
Yes. Check it. I want to do it so bad.
I know. So, apparently unknown to Marryat at the time of his discovery was the report of the Englishman A.C. Harris, 1790 to 1869, who identified the Serapeum as the same one described by Strabo and announced his discovery in a lecture in London in 1848. Prior to Harris, a French explorer named Paul Lucas of 1664 to 1737 published his account of a somewhat terrifying descent into the dark and mysterious tunnels. And Voyage de Louis the something French. Yeah.
Le Bon.
Louis de Le Bon. I don't know what he's saying. He lists a bunch of names here and ends with Egypt. So this is out of that guy's manuscript. After examining this monument and viewing the 3 beautiful pyramids that we found on our way, we finally arrived at the pit that we were looking for. It appeared square from the outside and 12 feet in diameter and around 30 feet deep. We all went down and lit up several candles that I had brought with me. I mean, we're talking about candles here, right? State of the art, buddy. As soon as we reached the bottom, we found a hole in which we had to lie on our stomachs for about 20 feet. So they're like shivvying along the sand, carrying candles with stone above them and sand below them, right? On their stomachs. This first entrance was guarded by a snake that frightened us and which we killed. It's the Serapeum, buddy. It's the place of Serapis. Snakes. If the entrance to Lake Avian had been as frightening as the one I had just mentioned, poets could have written more dreadful descriptions of hell that they have left us. After having traversed, with much trouble, this narrow channel, we found ourselves in a large corridor, on both sides of which one could see an endless number of pots of clay, of which I have spoken, and of which the covers were sealed with mortar. There were a large number that were broken, the others were still intact. There were within these pots birds, embalmed and swathed, in bands and cloth, like mummies. The underground vault was huge, and had many galleries leading to the right and to the left. It was impossible to visit them all. Adopting the strategy of Ariadne and her lover before he entered the labyrinth to fight the Minotaur, I had brought 2,000 fathoms of string, which is 3.6 kilometers. But this ran out before I reached the end of the cavern, after which we were not prepared to penetrate further. 3.6 kilometers of string, and they did not find the end.
Oh, man.
All the galleries were cut in the rock, and there were a mixture of kinds of chambers, those filled with these pots, and the others with mummies, most of them reduced to dust. I noticed in many of the niches the heads of bulls, from which I deduced that this was the place where the god Apis was interred. I have no doubt that the bullhead that was given to me for M. de Valancourt by M. Le Marie, consul in Egypt, came from this place. It had been found by the Arabs of Saqqara in a chamber cut in the rock and hermetically sealed, which by a singular chance was opened and an embalmed full bull found. I found something similar in the catacombs that I have described. This bull was buried in a large case upon which the head was represented. This case was gilded and painted, and surrounded by a beautiful balustrade about 5 feet high, also gilded and painted in various colors. There was also found in the same area 8 urns of white stone, upon the covers of which are represented the heads of young girls, and upon the sides are many sorts of hieroglyphs. So it's like, this is one of the... It's obviously been, people have gone in there before, broken pots and stuff, but that's an early account of somebody descending into the Serapeum when it was still buried. That's really cool. From like
I had no idea there was all that stuff in there.
Yeah.
God, that's awesome.
And it's
But wait a minute.
kilometers and kilometers of tunnels.
Yeah, because the Serapeum we were looking at was actually pretty small.
That's just that part of it, yeah. The part with the boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's actually, the Serapeum
Is enormous.
is a massive labyrinth of tunnels.
Yeah.
And is it still lost? I mean, because
I don't know. I know that, Ben was telling us that there's places that are bricked up that, they've blocked off.
Yeah.
I don't want people.
He was also saying they probably stored stuff in there.
Yeah. I mean, but I imagine it would be very easy for somebody to go down in there and get lost and die. I mean, like, if there's enough tunnels and enough levels,
Oh, man. That's so cool.
Yeah.
All right. Last break.
Yep. Wow. I'm not even close to getting through all this.
I know. Last break, buddy.
All right.
Better wrap it up. Snakes. Welcome back to the Snake Bros Institute for Advanced Coprolite Studies. We think you're going to finish it up?
No.
Not finishing up the
We may have to have a part 3.
Christopher Dunn book.
I've made so many marks, and every one of them is just they're great quotes. I think they're worth all going through. I don't know if it's a whole other show of material. Well, maybe it is. I'm not even halfway through what I've marked. So,
yeah. The Watcher is officially observing us through osmosis.
Through lucid dreaming.
Poor guy was tired.
Yeah.
He did a great job while he was here.
Yeah.
We tried to talk to him during the break, but
yeah,
we got nothing.
He's passed out, probably. Don't blame him. I'm going to be passed out tomorrow after we try to put this.
Yeah. Space jobs are very difficult.
It's also easy to fall asleep in space because
that's right.
You're always in bed.
Yeah. And you're always up all night.
That's right. Okay. So this section I'm going to read from the book is it's basically his conclusions from the Serapeum. I don't want to go through all the Serapeum part of the book is great, but we've gone through most of that material with GMA and with Ben and with ourselves about the Serapeum boxes, and we've done that a bunch. So I just want to read this part, which is basically the conclusion of his Serapeum section. He says, the conditions I witnessed amongst the boxes indicate a high level of technology. Though True Stone, which is the company that he contacted to see if they could build one of the boxes.
Right.
Those True Stone did not have the capabilities to produce such an item if a manufacturer was under contract from NASA or the Department of Defense to create one identical to those found at the Serapeum with no expenses spared to do the job. They would certainly find a way. And he's saying this because he says that from his previous writings on the subject, people got the impression that he was saying that we couldn't do it. And he's like, no.
Yeah.
We could totally do it. It just, we don't have what we need, but the first thing that we would do if we were going to do it is build the stuff we need to do. Right. So we couldn't do it, but we could do it.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yet the discussion among their engineers would go beyond what was currently available to them for tools. So he's saying in this scenario, if you had unlimited funds, the discussion among their engineers would go beyond what was currently available to them for tools, and they would consider tools that they would need to build, specially, in order for them to fulfill this contract. The rough removal of material from the inside of the box would not present a huge challenge, with the exception that craftsmen were working with a 55-ton block of stone. In considering the finishing of the inside of a Serapeum box, we would draw several conclusions. The dimensions between the opposite walls of the box are the same at the top and at least at the bottom of the square's blade, perhaps to the bottom of the box itself. The lid could not have been on the box when the inside of the box was finished. Therefore, the top surface of the box was likely cut flat and square to the inside surfaces. The underside of the lid must have been made to the same surface flatness as the walls. To arrive at this level of precision, the manufacturers would have needed metrology instruments. None have been found in the archaeological record.
Yeah.
So, one other interesting thing I want to point out that he points out in the book is that the lids were cut from the bottoms of the boxes.
Oh.
So, Again, he determines this by looking at unfinished rough cut boxes that are in the tunnels and boxes that are in the Cairo Museum that lids were being cut off of that failed, that broke, right? So in the Cairo Museum, there is a Serapeum box, at least a fragment of one, where the hollow part of the box has been scooped out and the box has been flipped over and the lid is being cut off the bottom.
Wow.
So you have this giant initial box. They scoop out the inside of the box and there's enough material left on the bottom where they can flip it over, cut off the excess on the bottom, and then turn the box back over and then take that excess they cut off and turn it into the lid that goes on the top of the box.
Yeah. It kind of makes sense too when you're wanting to hollow it out. You want that thick bottom,
right,
to help, preserve the integrity of the stone while you're grinding away at it.
Yeah. Then
you can take a simple cut, a straight cut, which is not nearly as, like in my mind, it's not nearly as destructive in a way as like boring out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perhaps.
And he shows that the apparent tool marks on one of the rough cut boxes looks like they were using some enormous jackhammer. I mean, this is not.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So
you can see these big square things at the ends of these gouges. Like you see with a jackhammer. When a jackhammer is going into concrete, you look at it, you see this square flat that are made from the beveled end of a big chisel tool.
Yeah.
So I found that interesting, that the evidence states that the boxes were brought in whole, or he says, well, they may have been hollowed out at the quarry. That would have made them easier to move. Mm-hmm. But the lids were cut on site, and then they were moved down in, and then all the finishing work was done inside the tunnel, and he points out that that's because of thermal shift and all this stuff. So, and he talks about how in flatness, when dealing with flatness, like if I'm in a place that specializes making flat surfaces, and I make an extremely flat granite plate that I'm going to give to Kyle for his company to use as a flatness measure, I put it in a box that is climate controlled and give it to him. And when he opens it and puts it in his business, he puts it in a climate controlled environment that's the same as the one that I use to make it in. Otherwise, it will shift and change, and then he won't have a flat surface anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So all that was very fascinating.
That's just crazy. Why?
Yeah, he doesn't answer the why question.
No, of course not.
Okay, so from chapter 6, The Shadow of the Sphinx. I found this interesting. He says, the Great Pyramid has stood, without question, as the first and foremost wonder of the ancient world. Though recently an effort was made to revise the list of wonders of the world, the pyramids of Egypt need no vote to qualify them. Those in doubt need only perform a detailed study of their construction. No other place in the world is blessed with such architecture and such exactness of manufacture. Even today, the precision that is found on the casing stones on the Great Pyramid is not required for construction of, for example, a modern skyscraper.
Yeah.
Which is true. So he's like, 3,000-4,000 years ago, when they were making the casing stones for the Great Pyramid, they were using precision that we still don't use on our biggest, most complicated, largest buildings.
Yeah.
He says, while I was in Egypt in 1995, I brought with me some gauges to inspect the flatness of artifacts that, when I saw them in 1986, had seized my attention by their exact appearance. Just looking at an artifact, however, is not good enough when attempting to determine its true characteristics. I needed some kind of known reference with which I could compare its exactness. I also needed something simple and transportable. The precision ground straight edge I used in 1995 allowed me to determine a higher order of accuracy in many different artifacts than what has been described in any previous literature written on the subject. The flatness of the straight edge I used was true to within 1/10 of the thickness of a human hair, or 0.0002 inches, or 0.005 millimeters for you metrics out there. The granite blocks outside the pyramid were flat, but with a few exceptions, they did not have a polish and could not be considered as precise as the gauge. Yet the surface inside the sarcophagus in Khafre's pyramid, which is the second largest pyramid on the Giza Plateau, was remarkable in that sliding the gauge along it both vertically and horizontally was no different from sliding it along a modern granite precision surface plate that we might find in a machine shop or tool room. Discovering such precision was an unexpected surprise to me. I wondered why the craftsman cut the inside surface of a sarcophagus to such great accuracy if its intended purpose was to be someone's burial place. Since I first wrote about this aspect of Egyptian craftsmanship, nobody has given me a satisfactory answer to this question. One argument presented to me was that the king was viewed as a god, and if the king wanted a flat, polished surface, he could have one. This answer, however, raises a crucial question. How did the ancient king become aware of ultra-precise flat surfaces in the first place?
Yeah. Where did he get this notion of flatness?
Right. His humor in this book is great. I mean, maybe some of them are like, they're nerd jokes, but still.
I love it.
Yeah. It's so dry, You can imagine him saying it. So he says, a surface plate is used in manufacturing as a baseline or datum from which a manufactured item, such as a sophisticated combustor for a jet engine, is measured. Before the Industrial Revolution, there was little need for flat surfaces that held to such high levels of accuracy. So to find one that was crafted more than 4,000 years ago in the past was remarkable.
Yeah. I still want to know, where were their calibrating slabs, for whatever their machines were.
And his point is that a lot of these artifacts that he's looking at, the Serapeum boxes on the interiors, the inside surfaces of these boxes that are in the pyramids, are as flat as our calibrating surfaces.
Right, I know. That's... yeah.
So he says, before several witnesses, like in front of, right, I slid this edge along the smooth interior of the granite box with my flashlight shining behind it and demonstrated its absolute flatness. While I was doing this, though, I was anxious to perform other tests. So I want to set this up. He's talking about how there's a big group and they've all come there and he's come with them and he's one of the presenters, talents.
Yeah.
So he's been brought along and there's a big documentary happening and there's a whole group of people and they're all kind of going to these places and people are giving demonstrations or giving speeches and he's there to do his thing with all the precision tools and show stuff. He's bought, so on this trip, he's brought better precision tools than he had last time. And each time they were going to a place to do something, he gets nervous. Like, what if I was wrong last time I was here? I've got better tools now. What if it shows that I wasn't right with my less accurate tools? So that's what he's doing here. Is now he's in front of all these people and he's giving his demonstration and shining flashlights around. And he's like, I hope it's really flat, like I thought it was. Says, while I was doing this, though, I was anxious to perform other tests. The square corners were of critical importance to me. Modern machine axes are aligned orthogonally, or exactly perpendicular to each other to ensure accuracy, and to ensure that the corners a machine cuts into an object are square and true. The requirements for producing such accuracy go beyond coincidental simplicity. I wasn't expecting the corners of the sarcophagus to be perfectly square, for perfection is extremely difficult to achieve, and to find in an extremely ancient artifact that was supposed to serve as a coffin would be a miracle. Yet I was not prepared for what I found. I was astonished as I slid my square along the top of the parallel. I used the top of the parallel to raise the square above the corner radius, and found it fit perfectly on the adjacent surface. The significance of the find came over me, and I pointed it out to others in the group. The film crew were busy capturing it on video as I went to each corner and performed the same test. On 3 corners, the square sat flush against both surfaces. The 4th corner had a gap that was detected by the light test, though its variance from being a true square may have been no more than 0.002 inches. Wow. So this is the box in the Khafre pyramid, the one that most people in pictures people mistake for the Great Pyramid. It's the one that has the casing stones still at the top.
Okay, yeah,
it's just almost as big as the Great Pyramid, and a lot of people think it is. It's got the casing stones. It looks like it's got the pyramidion up there because the casing stones are intact at the very top of it. So there's a sarcophagus, quote unquote, sarcophagus box in there. And that's what he's measuring this on. And he's showing that, like, dude, this is the exactness of the box exceeds the ability of his tool to measure it. In other words, it's just as flat as anything we can make when we're trying to make extremely flat stuff, except for that one corner. It doesn't quite fit on the edge. Actually, the surfaces are all flat. It's just that 190 degree is a little bit off in one corner. So his
Which
question
is really weird.
Yeah. His question is like, well, there's.
I mean, that's just weird.
Yeah.
Because you would expect it to be off in two corners.
Right.
If it's off, I mean, how's it only off in one?
If it's right in one corner, it's just turned a tiny bit.
Right, but then that would make the other one not.
I know, yeah.
And
it seems like damage, maybe. I don't know.
If there's three of them that are,
or maybe it isn't flat. I don't know.
Yeah, it must not. There must be some kind of warping going on in that one corner.
Yeah.
That's weird.
This is great. He says John Anthony West, is very good at reaching the heart of an issue using simple analogies. In summarizing the evidence of precision at Giza, he said, "It's like finding a Porsche where only a wheelbarrow should be."
Yeah.
I thought that was genius. Man. God rest his soul. Let's see. One more, and then we'll stop, and I'll save the rest for the next show. He's looking at contoured blocks that are laying around at Giza, right? So he found one at one point, and he was marveling at it. He's like, it's made out of granite. It's enormous, and it's got this beautiful three-dimensional curve on it. And he had gone home, and he had told somebody about it, and that guy went to Egypt and tried to go find it and found a different one. So that he thought was it, right? So he's like, I'm following this guy, and we're both really excited going to look at this contour block that I think I'm going to look at, but then he takes the wrong turn. He's like, but I kept following him, and there's another one that's totally different, but still is complicated. So that's what he's talking about here. And he says the contoured block on the Giza Plateau is an extraordinary piece. Because of its design, it suggests that it was made so that another component would fit against it. Now, we've talked about this a lot in these megalithic precision, like at Pumapunku and other places, where they look like they were made to have something socketed into them or something, whether it was machinery or whatever. He says, but I have no idea what that other component could be and what it would do. Perhaps it too, like the cornice, was merely another architectural element that had been broken out of its original place and has been lying out in the open on the plateau for millennia. So he eventually does find a similar construction. So this contour block he looks at, he calls it a couch. It's sitting where it's got these arms that are real far apart, and then it's got this curved top, and then it comes down, and there's a sort of a sharp corner, and there's another curve, right? So you can sit on it like a couch, right? He calls it the granite couch. The other one that he was looking at that his friend found is a more simple curve, but it's still three-dimensional, has this, right? So you could imagine it all the way up at the top of a temple wall. It would kind of curve. It'd make
like crown molding.
Yes, almost, like a crown molding curve. Well, he finds an intact doorway, like where it's got the lintel stones going across the top.
Yeah.
Right. So it's got this megalithic dry laid, non-homogeneous stonework, very flat, going up, and then at the top there's this lintel going across. And the ceiling is intact on the interior. So when you walk in the hallway, there's still stones going across the top of the ceiling. And you can see that a similar couch-like thing has been flipped over and put up there and then inset into that other thing. And they grab onto each other above the top. And so it leaves you with a doorway that has a lintel stone that has this beautiful curve coming down that attaches to the ceiling. Hard to describe without very hand-wavy. I'm waving my hands around to show Kyle what I'm talking about.
I'm still not getting it, but
yeah,
it's all good.
Yeah, basically the two complex faces of the blocks were fitted towards each other, and the arms of the couch that's now upside down is holding the outside of the other block, and that whole thing is now one piece, and it's set above the doorway.
Okay,
right. So take a bunch of pillows and throw them on the floor, flip your couch over and set them onto it. That makes a big cube, and then you can put that on top of the doorway.
Okay, I got you.
I'm sorry, not a big rectangular cubicle block, right? Yeah.
Rectangular prism.
All right. I was hoping to be able to end this with his outro, but I guess we'll have to do that on the next show when we talk about it.
That's cool, man. It's really, really interesting stuff. So
Yeah. He has a great concluding section in the book that just kind of lays it all out.
yeah. We have an infinite number of episodes coming, so
That's right.
it's not like we're running out of time here.
Yeah. Just feels like I didn't go through it properly, but
No, I think it was great.
yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. I enjoy doing these
I
book
did.
reports. So you guys can get a hold of us, as you know, brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. Go to the website, brothersoftheserpent.com. Comment there on any of the episodes. We love seeing the comments there. Got to combat the spam. Check out the Snakeology or the Glossary of Terms, or both. Check them out. Check both of them out. Follow us on Twitter @SnakeBros with no vowels, SNKBRS. I am active on Twitter. Share the shows anywhere you can. Facebook. We have a Facebook group. If you want to join that, look us up, Brothers of the Serpent on Facebook. It's being run by Jordan. Thanks to him. The Grand Watcher is there. George Howard is there. The Watcher is there. Has over 100 members now, I'm told. We're not.
All right.
We're not on Facebook. Sorry. No plans to be in the future either.
Donate to our pyramid
Yeah,
scheme.
thank you.
And thanks to everyone who has donated. We really appreciate it. Write reviews for the show. Really helps us out if you can't donate. Write reviews even if you can donate.
Yeah. Do
Helps us
both.
out doubly. And yes, thank you to everyone who has supported the show. It's really amazing.
Yes.
And
We are saving it, and we do stuff with it. We have bought chairs, better chairs. We're getting better equipment for the studio.
bought cough buttons here so we're not annoying you with our coughing.
Yeah, so we can.
There are 2 microphones in the room, so it just makes the coughing quieter. So hopefully
Farther
gives you
away.
a more pleasant experience listening to the Snake Bros. And don't forget about History Shift. He makes all our YouTube videos, and this is another aspect of the value for value system. He has donated so much of his time to the
Yes.
show. We really appreciate all of his work. He's done every single show on YouTube.
He's also moved them to another platform called Bitmovio,
Oh, okay.
and we are now making money through the views on that. So
Wow.
that is another revenue stream. He says it's making $1 a day at this point.
Wow.
Yeah. So thanks so much to History Shift. This is how the value works.
Don't watch our videos on YouTube. Go watch them on
Bitmovio, yeah.
Bitmovio.
Doesn't cost you anything, but we make money somehow. I don't know how it works.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, History Shift. Also check out his blog.
Yeah. HistoryShift.com,
Yep.
where he details his saga of looking for dolmens and glacial erratics in Montana and running from Sam Squanch.
Yep. And we're about to be having a rendezvous.
That's right.
Pretty soon we're going to the Arclantis, the Crystal Hippie Conference
That's right.
with Randall.
Randall and Brad.
Randall and
yeah.
Brad will be there. History Shift's going to be there. A bunch of the Snake Force is coming.
Yeah. Brenner's coming. GMA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be great fun.
So anybody, yeah, it's in.
Wear your Snake Bros
in
gear
Arkansas?
so we can find you and
Yes. Yeah.
yell
that
at
would
you
be
from
great.
afar.
We'll have a Snake Bros meetup. What do you call that? When it's a bunch of snakes hang out.
I don't know. It's one of those Indiana Jones pits.
That's right.
Snake pit. And if you don't like the show, bring a whip. And,
Also, Pod Doodles. Follow this guy on Twitter. Let's look him up. Pod Doodles @Pod Doodles, and also on YouTube. He takes our podcasts and other people's podcasts and listens to them and doodles digitally and records the whole thing as a video so you can watch while you listen. And it's really cool and interesting. So check him out.
also, if you're new to the show and you're looking for the back catalog, you can go to our website, find them there, because there's only like 100 shows up on
That's
the
right.
feed right now.
That's right. So you can
All right.
find the shows on the web, the archive shows on the website or on YouTube, whichever one you.
That's
prefer.
true. No, not YouTube. The other one,
Bitmovio. Yeah, Bitmovio. It's just like it's bitmovio dot something.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. One other thing. When you send us emails, if you don't want me to read it on the show, just say that right at the beginning. Don't read it on the show, and then I won't. Otherwise, I will consider it fair game. So just keep that in mind. And don't forget, all of you Patreon supporters and Pyramid Scheme supporters, let us know which emails you want and which ones to have them attached to. Send that as emails in the email. Right? That wasn't confusing, was it?
Subject, email.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Oh, it's the Watcher back. The Watcher just came back.
Oh, the Watcher's back here. Watcher, come on and say goodbye.
Hey, buddy.
He fell asleep. We're ending the show. Come on and say goodbye to everybody. He's like, no, I don't want to do that. Can't. Background noise. Okay, buddy. All right. Thank you guys so much. We love you.
Always have.
Yep. Good night, Adamu. Get back to work.